Okay, the game is Silverton. This is something I think got a decent number of requests, and I've certainly been wanting to play this for a long time. I had just played it not long before I started doing my videos. I had just played it a couple of times, once solitaire and once with my not yet wife at that point. So, like some other things, say the Civil War Brigade series, it's kind of not gotten, as much playtime on the video. It hasn't gotten as early a playtime on the video as maybe my liking of the game, and the number of times I've picked it up and played it over the years would imply it should have gotten. It should have come up a lot earlier. Then again, things like 1830 should have come up a lot earlier too. But this one, I think, still holds a lot of interest for me in terms of a solo game. Where 1830, I've probably played a lot of enough of it and have enough other 18XX games that I don't pull it out as often. This one, actually, I'm surprised it's taken so long to get to the table. Let's talk a little bit about what we've got for the components. First of all, I probably don't have enough table space here for it. I've got two of my tables together. I'm probably going to need to offload maybe some of the cards and the chips, because as players get collections of stuff like an 18XX game, they're going to have a lot of crap sitting in front of them, and I just don't have a lot of room there. I have enough room for their money and maybe a couple of certificates. We'll see. It's not too far. It doesn't take a humongous amount of room. So what do we have? Well, we have the board to begin with, and that looks like this giant road map. The lines are representing rails. The little box numbers are not the highway number, but instead the cost to build that section of track. Now, in some cases you have nearly parallel tracks. In some cases you have exactly the same dual track where two people can basically build in the same place. And you're going to represent how you build things with these little cubes on the track to see who owns what. I originally started playing this with the first version of it. A friend of mine had that. He picked up the El Paso expansion or whatever, and I've always been a little iffy on the El Paso expansion. Well, this is the deluxe edition and it comes with it built into the map. You can't cut it off. You can't just remove it from the game easily. I mean, I guess you could find out what existed in the El Paso. I think you'd be cutting off down to Santa Fe. You may have to change the selling chart though, and you'd certainly have to pull a bunch of cards out, but that's no big deal. I just wish they had left it so that you could play either version, because I've never been certain I liked the El Paso expansion at all. And in some numbers of players, I think it causes a problem. They may have tweaked it a little bit, though. I've not been as disturbed by it in this. And I've come up with some rules to make it less damaging in terms of how players get assigned their locations. Okay, so you have this map, and it's got little locations listed on it, and those locations, what you will notice is they match locations on these cards. These are mines, and you've got a little star to indicate where you're going to find that mine. So this is West Cliff. It's going to be somewhere over here, and there it is. Okay. It can be kind of difficult to find them, especially on this map. It's a smaller map than the original game, which may make it a little easier to fit on a table like this, but it also makes it a little harder to read, I think. Maybe not, because things are more condensed, so it's easier to suck everything in if your eyes are better. Mine, of course, aren't terribly good. On these cards, you have a little chart that's going to indicate how well they produce. You have a cost to claim it and a cost to operate it, and what commodity they produce. You also have these, which are stacked in sets A, B, and C, shuffled. And these are passenger routes, and the A routes are always available at the beginning of the game. And they should all be face up. Okay, and let's take a quick pick. Here's one, Denver to Pueblo. That looks really easy. And it costs you $165 to set up the route if you have the track set, and it'll pay you 80 bucks a turn, which is a nice payout. You know, you're getting the money back essentially in 2 turns. Okay, over here's the selling price chart, and this is going to handle supply and demand issues. As you sell certain commodities, the price will be depressed. But if nobody's selling those commodities, if there's not a sufficient amount to meet the needs of the external world, this is Colorado here, for the most part, obviously some of it's not. If you can't meet those needs, the prices will slowly increase. That makes it a game in which sometimes players will be hoarding their goods in order to drive the price up, but that only really works if you have a monopoly or some sort of collusion to do so. If somebody else is involved in it and needs money, well, they can screw your day up. Okay. And we have the play money. The play money is, I like play money. This play money I especially like. This is the Mayfair stuff that came out for their 18XX games. Really, really high quality in appearance at least. Only single-sided and kind of thin paper, but what pretty pictures on there. The paper's not terribly thin. It's a little sturdier than, say, you know, your Avalon Hill money, which was never very pleasing to me, or your Monopoly money. Okay, and then you got a big deck of these additional claims. You got these trains, and everybody's going to start off with a 9 train. I'll deal those out in a bit. But as the game goes on, more advanced trains become available. You have these chips over here that are going to represent your different commodities, and they're color-coded as well as having little stickers you had to apply. You also have little markers to indicate Leadville depletions. So this game's called Silverton, and Silverton's an important town. It's somewhere in the middle here. Has a decent number of mines. I've known people who played the game who said, I gotta get to Silverton, that's the name of the game, that's gonna be important. Well, it ain't that important compared to one other town. Something called Leadville up here. And I've been to Leadville, I've never been to Silverton. Leadville's an impressive mining town. It's just got so many claims. I don't know what it has, 8, something like that, in the deck. Some high value ones. There's also a little passenger route somewhere in here. I don't think it's, well, here's one. Denver to Leadville. It costs $500. It pays $260, so it pays off within 2 turns. It's not a long distance, okay? You're going Denver to Leadville, but it's a painful distance. These are hard track to maintain during the winter. It pays out a lot of money for the early part of the game. If you can get that 260, you're making huge amounts of money off that route just by running the passengers there. But you're at the mercy of people running their mines. If they end up depleting the Leadville mines, if 4 depletions happen, and that's what those markers have, this gets discarded from the game. Anyway, Leadville is really the key location up here. I'm not as familiar with some of the other good mines. Silverton certainly is, but a lot of the others are kind of spaced out and a lot more diverse in terms of their location, right? The Leadville centering, and then there's other important stuff near it. Dillon, Fairplay, lots of gold and silver in here. And gold and silver is an easy way to make a lot of money in the sense that once you start producing it, you can hoard it, watch the prices increase, and then dump it at once. Things like coal are a lot harder to make money for, and you'll see why, because you have to haul them, and it's harder to haul them, especially in the advanced game which we're going to play. Okay. I think that covers most of the components here. Let's take a look at what we have. Some of the cards over there in the Silverton, in the claim deck, are going to be event cards, which take effect when they're drawn. Okay. A couple little spaces on the board. Jail, where you got to buy your people out of. graveyard. If somebody dies, again, someplace you got to buy your people out of, but in jail they can get out. Up here, these are where you put commodities that you've sold. So if you sell gold, it dumps in here, and at the end of the turn, it's going to affect the prices. But lumber and coal, the commodities depend upon the market that you sell them on. And we'll get to that in a bit too. Okay. You also have these little cubes that you know how to use. You mark your track locations with them. We kind of showed you that. And then you have these discs. And you start off with a couple of these, and they are surveyors and prospectors. Surveyors are used to claim track ahead of time and buy so that you buy it. And prospectors are used to claim mines as well as passenger routes, which is a little weird, but whatever. Okay. Let's take a look. Let's work at it from the game sequence, and then we'll go back to specific examples as we hit there. So the first thing in the turn is you randomly determine the order of the game every turn. There's a set of turn order cards, and you shuffle them up and deal them out. Then, in that turn order, the first player has to place all his surveyors and prospectors. How does he do that? Well, his surveyors, he has to place, let's say this guy is starting, I don't know where he's starting. He's actually probably starting in Pueblo, but let's say he's starting in El Paso. He has to place it coming out of his starting city or his track to an adjacent location. And that's saying, I'm going to build that track maybe. You can't build track where you don't play a surveyor. Now, it's possible to place 2 surveyors in a row, but you have to make a success check for that. Normally, you'd be playing, if you have multiple surveyors, you might be playing them one to extend, say, your main line of track, and one to get to some location you want to get to. Early in the game, though, you probably don't have a lot of places you want to be getting to, and you don't have a clear main line for your track. Your money's very limited, so you may actually want to do that double build if you have the opportunity. In the 6-player game, I think we're not going to start off with 2 surveyors, 2 prospectors. I think we're going to start off, well, normally, you buy them. You have 8 game points, and chances are you have 1 of each. Okay. All right. Then each player in turn places their surveyors and prospectors in the same way. And prospectors just go up here to say, yeah, I'm interested in that mine. I'm going to buy it if it comes to me. Or, yeah, I can hook that passenger run up. I'm going to pay the price to do so. Okay. But if 2 people end up on the same track section or on the same mine, and they're for track or passenger route, for track section there's some little weird rules I won't go into, but if 2 people are heading for the same sort of, if they can collide. So for example, see, that's a location? No, that's not a mine. Okay, so if somebody's running this way, somebody else, if somebody puts let's say that's a surveyor there, and somebody puts a surveyor there, well, if somebody puts one here, somebody putting one here, these 2 would be in a challenge situation. And the way a challenge is resolved is you simply roll the dice and add the bonus of the prospector for the most part. Over on the passenger cards, the length of the route is important as well. You're allowed to prospect mines that you don't have any hope of connecting to deprive them of other people, or to other people. The thing with challenges, though, is if you win the challenge, you're semi-obligated to buy what you want. Not really. But if you don't buy it, the next person in order, in terms of, winning that challenge, because more than 2 people could be involved in a challenge, has the option to buy it then. You can't deprive someone of the option to buy simply by beating them to the challenge. You have to actually pay the cash and buy it if you win the challenge, or else they get it, or get an option. Okay. It's possible on bad rolls, direct 2, that you end up in jail. And then you have to pay a fine to get your guy out of jail, or else roll dice at each turn, 7 or 11, in order to get out of jail. Otherwise, you just rot in there. Okay? Construction and operation, this is also done in turn order. It does have to be for the most part. So in turn order, each player pays for the things that they build. So for example, if I had a prospector here and a surveyor here, I could actually pay for this track, and I put my cube to claim it. I pay for the location, I take my mine. In addition to that, you can pay the operating costs for any mines you have, and then you get to roll dice for them. On the first turn a mine is operating, normally you roll 2 dice. On the first turn that a mine's operating, you only roll 1 die and you add 6. Which if you look at the chart means you're almost guaranteed to produce something in most of these mines, even in things like Elizabethtown with very high depletion ratings. Look at that. You know, maybe a third of the time it's just going to crash. Well, it'll always produce something on the first try. There's some where that's not the case. There's some that fail on like 2 through 7 up here. I think there's a 2 through 8 somewhere. Yeah, here, Aspen Silver. Those are risky mines. You might get nothing out of them. In which case, whatever you invested in them is just lost, and the mine ends up going here in the discard pile. Okay. If you do succeed in rolling a commodity number, you get that much of the commodity on the mine. So for example, I could have 2 silver on Heber City. Well, 2 silver on Heber City doesn't do me a lot of good. I gotta get that silver back someplace where they'll buy it. And that's why there are railroads in the game. And of course, it is a railroading game. So what you have to do is you have to build your track to the mine locations and then haul the goods back. But that's not what we're talking about right here. Right here what we're talking about is the other operations costs. Well, at this point, let's see. Yeah, this is when you sell your goods too. So actually, this is when we talk about it. At this point, then, you allocate your trains. Now, in the basic game, I think you have like 2 locations. You can pull off 2 cards. You can take the commodities off them and deliver them someplace where they go. I never play the basic game, so I don't really remember the rules very well. In the advanced game, what's important is the number on the train. And the number on the train is compared to these little mountain or little triangles with a number. Alright, how much stuff can you carry? You can carry an amount of stuff equal to the number on your train, or trains, because you can hook multiple trains up together, divide it by the highest little mountain symbol that you have that you're crossing. So, for example, if I'm crossing with a 9 train this 6 space, I can only haul 1 thing. It's rounded down. But if the highest thing I cross is a 4, I can carry 2 things. And the trains can get very big indeed. And of course, like I said, you can have multiple. But you're limited to only 4 trains at a time in the game. Okay. So you can see how much stuff you can carry. And gold and silver count as half stuff. Because they're so valuable that the counters, I don't know, whatever. Because they weigh less, right? Yeah, okay. You're just hauling less of them, that's all. So now, the other thing that happens, when you deliver stuff to a given location, if, for example, I deliver lumber to Denver, well, I get the lumber price in Denver, which is $100 per load of lumber at this point. There's a limit. I'm not allowed to sell more than a certain amount. So for example, I can only sell 10 lumber in 1 load at Denver. That doesn't affect other people's sale. The number of players does affect how much you can sell in a load though. So for example, or no, it doesn't. It affects what markets are open. Okay. There's no limit ever to selling the gold, copper, and silver, however, which is one of the reasons why people hoard these and dump them all at once. And they're often the game-ending action in games with a fixed price limit. Okay, and the essential game ending action in games without. In terms of gold, copper, and silver, it says any market. What that means is I don't sell it to specific places. However, there's a limitation on where you can sell these, and I can't remember it. I know Salt Lake City, Denver, and I think El Paso are allowed. I think those are the only 3 places that you can sell. I'm going to have to look that up. But anyway, I think it's limited. You can't sell it, you know, at Santa Fe, for example. They may have changed that in the advanced game, though, because they added the Santa Fe player at times. So I don't really know. Anyway, you're also allowed to cut deals with other players at this point. And you can transfer claims. You can transfer, oh, I don't know what else. Track segments. And that's it. And cash, of course. You can lend or sell someone freight so that they can deliver it. So if someone has track going through your claim, you can say, hey, I'll sell you that freight for, and come up with some agreement. So basically you can split the value that's gotten from delivering it. Now, how that splits equitably is definitely a question that comes up in a lot of games. And sometimes people just sit on a load rather than sell it. Okay. And then you pay any fines that you have, which can include getting your guys out of jail. Okay, after all of the players have taken their turn and everything's been sold and it's all piled up in little discs here, then one by one through the commodities, we look at how much of this sold, and we're going to roll on this track here. Oops. Each commodity has its own track, and what you're going to do is you roll usually 2 dice, but I think in gold it's 1 die. It specifies here. Add the amount sold, for example, in gold, and you just get a die roll, and that'll affect the price. The higher the number, the lower the price. Now, if some say IDN, so this would be 2 dice plus quantity sold of silver minus the IDN. IDN is the changing value that keeps going up throughout the game so that the demand is increasing throughout the game. The longer the game goes, the more value, the less depressed silver becomes. All from silver, lumber, and coal, all of these use the IDN. Some of them, though, for example, the coal markets in Denver and Salt Lake City, you divide the amount sold by 2 for your die rolls. Anyway, it's all fairly easy to do, to see, and you see what the modifier to the current price is. The price can't go above or below the gray zones, so it can boink up against something or boink down against something. And the price will remain fixed there. You can never hurt the price of the commodity or help it that much. All right, after you run through all those commodities, then you replenish the cards. New passenger routes. If somebody took a passenger route, you'd flip the next card over. If some of these have been taken, some of these mines have been taken by players, you replace them. It's also possible, one thing I forgot to mention, to prospect off the top of the deck. This is kind of risky. You put your prospector there, it means you get to draw a card, and it's just yours if you want to buy it. If you don't want to buy it, it goes out in the pool. But the danger is some of the event cards will affect you badly if you draw them that way. Normally the event cards will come out as replenishments because the mines are useful in a 6-player game. In a 2-player game or 3 or whatever, it may be hard for... There may be mines that nobody wants. Okay. End of the game is kind of... It depends on the game you're playing, okay? There are fixed price limit games, there are fixed turn limit games, all kinds of different choices. Okay. I'm going to load this up and then get on to the advanced and optional rules. Alright, not a whole lot of time here. That means, no, not an hour-long video. Let's go over some of the advanced options, and then at the beginning of the game, I'll tell you, of the playthrough, I'll tell you what I'm actually going to play with. I may discuss it a little bit. For one thing here, you can start with an initial choice of what prospectors and surveyors you want to take, where you use these game points to purchase different ones. Now, the requirement is you have to buy at least one of each, but beyond that, you can pick what you want. And I'm kind of probably leaning towards doing that. Definitely playing with trains, where you have to deal with the numbers for the trains and divide it by the distance you're traveling over. Definitely playing with snowplows. So something I didn't explain in the basic rules, these white areas. In the winter turns, the black turns, those white areas, those white train tracks become impassable, with one exception. If you're playing with the snowplows rule, you can use these snowplow pieces, which you buy, just like you would buy trains, except you have an unlimited amount of these. And like the trains, they become available on specific turns. So on turn 1, 9 and 15 trains are available. Then on turn 5, the next year, the 24 trains become available, etc. Or the 15, yeah, the 24 become available. Likewise, the snowplows improve over time. They get more expensive as they get better. And they give you a die roll modifier. You roll a die and see, I believe, if you can get over the distance factor, the triangle number there. Trying to keep that Denver to Leadville route open, at least the good one. See, there's two Denver to Leadville routes. There's one that runs this way, and then there's the good one, which kind of runs this way. Well, the good one, when you're fighting over a passenger route, whoever's got the shortest passenger route gets the distance difference as a die roll modifier. So you can pretty much constantly, every year, challenge for the Denver to Leadville passenger route and other passenger routes if that track is sufficient to make the difference. By rolling against, by rolling a competition, because you have this die roll bonus based on your shorter track. But it goes away every winter if you don't have snowplows. Now, the other player probably doesn't want to challenge you in the winter unless he's close to your value otherwise. He automatically wins the challenge in the winter, gets your passenger route, and then forces you to re-challenge when springtime comes. If he's close to your number, he might get more out of it than you do. He may force you to multiple challenges. He may make it very, very expensive for you to get that track back. Anyway, the snowplows allow you to have a chance of keeping that track open. That's all they really do. Bunches of scenarios, including a lot of solitaire scenarios, and then these spike scenarios. Now, I like spike scenarios. They don't work well in 6 players. There's too many people on the board to handle them. But in a spike scenario, you're basically playing, say, Denver and Salt Lake City, as one example. You'd sort of have two companies. They're run together out of the same cache, but they have 2 separate track segments, and each segment has its own train setups on it, and its own surveyors. And if you can join them together, then you pull the resources of your 2 companies into one, essentially. The money they share anyway, but some of the other things like track, the ability to deliver, because deliveries essentially can happen across the map. Distance doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the distance of individual segments. All right. And a number of other rules here. A number of other starting positions, etc. Then we go to the optional rules. And this is where I'm not sure what I'm going to play, what I'm not. Let's take a look at them. Passenger card slide. So this allows you to drop a prospector, and I think I'm going to do this. Drop a prospector on a passenger route, and you can push it into an empty space. Either an empty passenger route, and empty could be just the card's been taken, but there's another one underneath. Empty passenger route, or empty, even a mine space. If it goes in the mine space and the mine deck gets, and these get cleared out and reshuffled or whatever, Well, the passenger card gets discarded and it's out of the game at that point. So you can actually kill a passenger route that way, which is a little weird. Multiple snowplows. You can put as many snowplows as you like on each on a track segment. If any of them succeed, you succeed. So you can increase your chance of an important segment succeeding. Freight transfer. This one makes the game easier, actually. And some of them do. And this is one of the iffy ones for me. Normally, your freight stays on the card that it's on. The mine that produced it. In fact, if you have multiple mines in the same location, they're separate delivery zones. In this section, what you can do is you can drop goods off and collect them as sort of warehousing in these mining locations to save for later for one big shipment or whatever. It's an interesting option. I have mixed feelings on it. Improved passenger routes, definitely not. That doubles the value of them. They're good enough as they are. The game is more about delivering your passengers already in too many cases to me. Simplified selling price chart. Of course not. We don't play with anything simple. Hiring and advancing. This one's always interesting. So this gives you an initial amount of game points that's actually less than the advanced game does. The advanced game gives 8 game points for the 6-player game. This says, only start with 6. You can have a maximum of 4 pieces on the board, and you can hire, once you start your game, new prospectors and surveyors for $400. They have no bonus. You have to have one available. This is how you replace dead ones. Normally, you just get your dead one back for the money you pay. Here, your dead one, you lost a good guy. That's your problem. Whenever you win a dispute and you buy the track or the card, then the winning surveyor prospector goes up a level. And I really like games where you advance. The difficulty here is, well, the guy who's doing well with his surveyors and prospectors is going to be doing better later. The game already, hey, I do well with my money, I'll be able to invest it later. It already has a lot of that features. This is a die roll and luck feature, but I kind of like it, so I'm probably going to actually play with it. And that is it for Silverton. Nice little player aid cards with the sequence of play on them that's helpful. It's not too complex a game. And we'll take a look and see how